The original A119 came out in 2016 from a then upstart brand Viofo. It was the follow-up to the successful A118, whose wedge-shaped body defined one of the basic forms for dashcams to this day. It turns out that making a good quality product at a low price can kickstart an entire brand, and Viofo is now one of the largest makers of budget to mid-tier dashcams. The A119 had a modest update in 2019, the A119 V3, and then there was radio silence for 3 years. Viofo kept releasing 2-channel dashcam, 3-channel dashcam, but not really much in the way of single-channel budget cameras. That takes us to now, in 2022, where we're looking at the A119 Mini, the official successor to the original A119. And let me tell you outright, this camera is pretty dang good. Before I continue with this review, I want to quickly thank my friends Chuck at Panzer Platform and Retro Car Guy 530, who I'm collaborating on this review with. If you want to see some video samples in a different climate or their takes on the camera, links are up there or down in the description. The A119 Mini is the direct successor to the A119 V3, with several small updates and a couple large, more meaningful changes, but the basic formula stays the same. This is a dashcam that's easy to use, reliable, and has great video quality. The Mini delivered exactly what I expect out of a dashcam, making this one of the least eventful reviews I've ever done. After setting up the camera, it just did exactly what I expected it to do. Turned on, recorded video, and then turned off. There are a couple little fiddly things like trying to get parking mode working. It requires an additional purchase of a hardwiring kit. But aside from that, the camera is very straightforward to use. Here's the Mini next to its bigger, older sibling, the original A119. The Mini's a little bit chubbier and a little bit taller, but it feels less wide. It's a little heavier overall though. The A119 Mini's body is a refinement in build quality, with lessons learned from previous generations of these cameras. For example, while the camera is still all plastic like its predecessor, there are now more vent holes around the camera to let heat escape. The lens is fixed facing straight forward, but it does go up and down on a little bit of rotation. The back of the camera has a little postage stamp size screen and a couple buttons on the face. The camera's UI is pretty classic Viofo, kinda old school blue menu, 5 face buttons, and one big list of items for settings. Stop recording and hit the menu button to open the settings. Up and down navigates the lists. OK selects the item, and then the menu button backs out. There's also the app, and this camera does have Wi-Fi now to wirelessly transfer files and do some remote viewing. The Wi-Fi makes it a little bit easier to set up too because you've got a big screen to see what's going on, but for the most part I only really use it personally when I'm changing settings. The Wi-Fi can be turned off. One thing to note here, if you've used an older Viofo dashcam with Wi-Fi and have an older version of the app on your phone, make sure to update the app before connecting to this camera, otherwise it can break menus. Moving on to video quality, which is arguably the most important part of the dashcam. This camera has a 2K resolution, 2560 by 1440p at 60 frames per second, meaning that while during the day there's arguably not a huge increase in detail, fast motion can be captured easier without motion blur. The A119 Mini's video can be slowed down by half while still being smooth frame rate. This double frame rate and the addition of Wi-Fi are probably the two most meaningful changes over the original A119, but both of these changes do mean additional power consumption and additional heat. While I've not personally seen this camera overheat, it is important to note that I live in Canada and it hasn't been a particularly hot summer yet. So I will continue testing this camera throughout the summer and get back to you if I do have any issues. But aside from that, in my opinion, it is worth the trade-off of heat because the video quality is overall excellent. That 2K 60 frames per second is super smooth. The resolution strikes a balance between detail and file size, and in addition to being smooth, that 60 frames per second means twice the amount of frames with a license plate in it as a car zips by, additional chances of capturing the plate clearly. The Mini does have a handful of other resolution options, including a full sensor readout, a kind of 2K+, but that's limited to 30 frames per second and it is a 4:3 aspect ratio. Every other resolution is also a full sensor readout, meaning 1 pixel on the image sensor is 1 pixel in the video. It's always 1 pixel equals 1 pixel instead of 1.8753295 pixels equals 1 pixel, which can get very, very messy very quick. But the odd thing is, typically a lower resolution like 1080p would be taking all of the pixels on the sensor and squashing it down to 1080p. But this camera doesn't do that. It crops into the video sensor to continue with this 1:1 readout, meaning that 1080p is actually about 1.5 times zoom on this sensor. There's no wide angle or ultra wide field of view for the 1080p mode, only this more narrow video. It still looks good, but it doesn't really take advantage of any additional detail that the sensor might be able to provide it. I personally would not suggest getting this camera if you intend to use it in 1080p mode. This is a 2K camera optimized for 2K 30 or 2K 60. Day or night, in all weather conditions, rain or shine or sun, the 2K video looks great. We're cruising along the Alex Fraser Bridge here, going about 85 kilometers per hour, and this is an audio sample comparing the Viofo A119 Mini with the Viofo A129 Duo. The A129 Duo is about 3 or 4 years old at this point. It's been in my car pretty much ever since I got the camera. The A119 Mini is brand new, just released a couple weeks back. Night and low light, the reality with dashcams is that license plates are not super readable. Sometimes they're too bright because of the headlights, sometimes they're too blurry because of the motion, but for the most part the A119 Mini does a pretty good job of capturing them when it can. For example, rolling down the street, I can make out some street signs as long as I'm not going too fast, and license plates are readable from a distance where the headlights are not too bright against them. This is on par or better with other comparable cameras, and there is not too much image noise overall either. Other than that weird cropping issue, there's really not much critical to say about this camera. Proper heat testing is still required, and it has not been a hot summer around here, so never had the chance to do that. Other than that, this has been one of the easiest reviews I've ever written. Everything on the camera just kinda worked. It's honestly super rare that I can say that outright. It's always a question of reliability long term, which is a little bit impossible to test in a month. But thanks to Viofo's history of making good quality dashcams that are actually reliable, I'm pretty confident that the A119 Mini will stand the test of time and become one of the more highly regarded dashcams in the market. Thanks again for watching, and a quick reminder that this was a collaboration with Panzer Platform and Retro Car Guy 530. So make sure to check out those videos and see what those guys thought of this camera as well. They're linked in the description. And if you liked my video, a thumbs up, subscribe, anything like that will make me happy. See you in the next one.